So today I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while, and it's a little bit away from the technical aspect of some of the theory stuff that I get into on this channel. It's essentially about pedals and pedal design, but when many guitarists bring up pedals, what they really want to talk about is their favorites. And this is actually about what I hate about current pedal designs, the standards that we've come up with. And while I kind of understand technology's changed, pedals had to start somewhere, I want to see this new technology come about. One thing that really brought this to mind was the other day I ordered an RC505, not the Mach 2, but the Mach 1, and that's a whole other video basically why. But I ordered this looper station, the RC505, that is more advertised towards beatboxers because it's all tabletop. It is specialized so you can hit it with your hands. The buttons are soft and cushy and not foot switches like a guitar pedal. And Boss makes RC50, or if you get an RC600. And why not do that when you're a guitarist and you need the foot switches? And that got me back onto a problem that I've always had with pedals, which is hand accessibility. I've always hated for the longest time how you're standing on stage live with a cumbersome instrument and you're expected to bend down and crouch down in between songs or even in the middle of songs to tweak these knobs that are on the floor, like literally the farthest place that they can get from you. It's just never made a lot of sense to me. And while I understand they want to make as much money as possible, so they're putting this thing into a single unit with the foot switch and the knobs, and it's all self-contained, and you can carry around a few of them in a box or whatever, that's great. But I wish that there was a different way, and I've spent some time thinking about this, coming up with a plan to try to do something else. Now, let me take you through a couple pictures that I've made to kind of explain this design. The first thing we've got here is the head obviously separated from the pedal. Notice the inclusion of a table. If you're going to get these knobs up by your hands where you can manipulate them in real time with the music, you might as well have a table, and all of the different pedals could sit on the table, be wired to a separate foot switch that would be down here. And so each pedal could be sold in a way that it could be detachable. Maybe they actually connect together if you want them to, and then detach if you want them to with the use of a cable. So you would still have the input and output running through the head of the pedal as normal. Second picture, excuse the funny drawings here, but this kind of idea would just sort of be putting it into practice. Well, we can see everything would be wired. You'd be good to click it, but you'd be good to turn and play anything on your table at the same time. Eventually, in this picture, what would occur is you'd have all these different foot switches and all these different head units, and it would be like a lot more cumbersome than it needs to be, say just to turn on a distortion or a delay or something like that. So in this picture, what I'm sort of envisioning is they already make multi-foot switch MIDI controllers and stuff, though usually with those they only have one input. You're meant to control one device, one head unit with all of these foot switches. But what I'm thinking for this is that you would actually have 6 separate units, and they are all wired separately. They are literally just 6 different foot switches connected together, soldered together in one metal cabinet. And then they would each have their own individual input. So therefore you could connect them to 6 different effects as you see fit. Maybe you'd have a blue 1 and a yellow 2 and an orange 3, you'd separate them either via colors. Maybe you'd have a little sleeve, you could slide a little name tag into each one of them or whatever, but you could put stickers on them, you could do all sorts of things to try to differentiate them. But you'd eventually get used to, okay, 1's always my distortion, 2's always my delay, whatever, like you'd build that off of there. And I feel like they could sell these units pretty cheaply because they're really just analog. There would be no computerization There would be no processor going on in any of this, no MIDI signals. And then that leads me into a second problem that I always notice, which is just the processing or just the digitization of pedals. I've personally noticed, I don't know if you have, that when I get a Digitech multi-effect processor, it has an LED screen, and everything, all the functionality of the thing is hidden behind the screen in the processor. So they give you a few knobs, but you gotta click buttons, scroll through menus, find what you want, click it again, scroll through another menu. All the settings, you have to individually go to all these menus, okay? That for me is really inhibiting of my creativity. If I'm wanting to change a parameter, I want to do it pretty much immediately and move on. Or if I want to experiment, I don't want to click through all of these different menus trying to find things, and it's time consuming, and sometimes you don't even know what the thing is capable of because those parameters are hidden behind all these different menus and screens, and you've got to really dissect this machine. But the older school multi-effects processors, it has everything kind of out in front of you. Everything is controlled by foot switches and knobs. There are tons of knobs, maybe a lot of reading that goes on, but I'd rather read everything there in front of me than have to sift through all these different menus to find what I'm looking for. The band that I work with now, they have these new head rush modules, expensive, nice. You can save different song banks in them, and every song bank has all the different pedals that you've already established and saved for these songs. But again, I mean, it may be a touch LCD screen, but it honestly still puts stuff behind a wall in a way that I don't really like. I want everything's functionality kind of out in front of me. So looking at the ME50, you can see here that there's a dedicated overdrive, modulation, and delay. Now, you could say, you can't use a phaser or tremolo or harmonist chorus all at the same time, and that's a limiting factor, or at least with this particular machine. That's fair enough. However, you probably wouldn't be using all those at the same time unless you're just getting really crazy. But I mean, if you can't create the sound that you really want a piece to have by using one of those effects, when you start stacking them, I feel like just getting into experimental territory. Anyway, that's a side note. So it's also got compressor, noise suppressor, and reverb all separate from the other three, and you can turn those off and on just with the turn of a knob as well. It would be even better if they had a foot switch for these, of course, too. But then you've got also other effects you can control with the expression pedal. So this is honestly decent in that you do still get all of your controls. I like that at least Boss has maintained, even with their new one, that you kind of get to control each thing separately. And you see all your knobs out here in front of you. It really is like somebody smashed together 5 or 6 different pedals, and then you have them all to control. So this Line 6 Helix here could be a good example of one that, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's got a lot of capability, and I could eventually figure out how a lot of the basic effects work. I'm guessing the parameters change. At least there are knobs, right? You don't have to necessarily click through menus. You do get some knob controls. So it does seem like they've at least noticed that that's been a problem in the past, and you're able to control things more on the fly. But still, the fact that you're assigning what it is and that you're gonna have to use all of these sort of menu maps to get through everything, it creates more functionality. You can definitely do more with it, like actually manipulating the sample itself, right? Creating a loop and then shortening and lengthening the loop sample or whatever. You can do things that you could never do with a basic pedal, but it also takes away some of the practicality to me of actually being able to see what you're doing on a knob as you turn the knob and being able to engage it in a live setting. Those are just two things. One of them I'd like to see improved about pedal design in the future. I'd love to see something like that, and I'd be on board for tabletop pedal knobs and then foot switches on the ground. And number two, just my personal preference of sometimes you buy the latest piece of equipment and honestly it's just too complicated to work with, and you actually want to just take a step back, especially if you're beginning or you're learning. Just take some time playing with those knobs and understanding what these effects even do before you get into these crazy computers at your feet that you can buy. Yeah, that's it.